In high school, we'd read the story of Moby Dick. I'd never been a big reader, but I gotta say that story really resonated with me, and it launched a lifelong interest in sperm whales. Now, I'd always loved the sea anyway, everything to do with it. I knew my destiny from a young age was going to be something to do with water. I wanted to be a marine biologist and help study and protect the creatures of the sea. Well, I grew up in a landlocked city, and when me and my family went to Hawaii on vacation, it was instant love. It wasn't particularly the place, the people, or the culture, it was the ocean and the nature there. I knew then and there the ocean was in my blood. I surfed, swam, and loved every minute of that vacation, mainly because it had started to direct my life. Since reading Moby Dick, I'd learned everything I could about sperm whales. They seemed like almost mythical beasts to me, and I wanted to dedicate my life to spreading awareness about them so people would see them as I did. Well, I got through high school and I immediately started studying marine biology. In my second year, I met the love of my life, Shireen. Shireen, like me, was also in love with all things ocean. She was in the program with me, and we were instantly connected. She'd come from a long line of doctors and had to fight to pursue her own interests. I respected that about her. My parents were the complete opposite. They were very blue-collar and didn't really care what I did so long as I was happy and true to myself. Well, in our third year, we were assigned to a research study off the coast of Alaska. It was the practicum portion of our program, and we were beyond happy that we were able to go together. Shireen came from money, so she'd rented us a beautiful cabin there close to the research facility. Our flight there was uneventful. We were joined by a couple of other people from the program, Dan and Nicole. Dan was a socially awkward guy, and Nicole was, well, for lack of a better word, a bit of a bimbo. She was smart enough in matters of marine biology. I mean, she had to be, she was there with us, but well, when it came to common sense, she was more than a little lacking. Shireen and I even joked with each other quite a bit about how she managed to even stay in the boat half the time. Well, part of our research was to map the sperm whales off of the coast. There was inconsistency in the counts of sperm whales, and this project was to come up with a definitive number and also the locations of where they were. When we arrived at the cabin, it was definitely what you'd expect of an Alaskan cabin in the woods. It was rustic, quaint, and small. Shireen wasn't entirely comfortable when she saw it, but she was all about being adventurous and trying new things, so she eventually shrugged her shoulders and said, "Well, it's a little more rustic than I thought it'd be, but when in Rome, right?" Man, I loved that attitude with her. Even though she came from money and she was used to having everything just so, she wasn't snobby at all, and she was always willing to get her hands dirty. Well, we settled in for the first few days before our first days of heading out onto the boat. Shireen went into town and found some supplies to make the cabin a bit more homey. There was only one hardware store in town, and it had more than just hardware and tools. It was basically the town's general store. There were home things, the typical hardware stuff, even clothes there. She came back with curtains, floor mats, candles. She even came back with pictures for the walls. That cabin was furnished now, but hey, it was still basic. Foolishly, we had not realized that the cabin was heated by a wood-burning fireplace, so Shireen grabbed us a splitter and a hatchet. We laughed about how that would go. Neither of us had ever chopped wood or started a fire before in our entire lives. Well, Shireen was in pretty good spirits when she got back to the cabin and took to giving it that woman's touch that turned a place into a home, and I took to trying to chop wood. Trying being the operative word there. It was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. After a little practice, though, we had a fire raging in the hearth and were cozy and happy inside our cabin. We talked about how excited we were to go out on the boat the next day. We'd planned to meet up with Dan and Nicole at the research facility beforehand and head out together. So the next morning, we get our gear together, our notepads, pens, equipment, and we headed to the facility to meet our team leader. When we got there, we introduced ourselves to Rick, who was in charge of the project and would be taking us out on the boat. He was really serious and gave us an hour-long lecture on boat safety before we were even allowed to start packing up the gear and equipment that we'd be taking with us. Rick was going to assess each of us, so we were doing all our best to make a great impression. Finally, it was time to test out our sea legs, and we were heading further out into the ocean. Alaska was beautiful. Shireen had seen a lot when she was growing up. She traveled a lot with her family, but I'd never, ever been out of my hometown, aside from that Hawaiian vacation, so this was all actually pretty new to me. I was awed by the beauty of everything around us. There was a gentle mist over the water that day that made everything seem ethereal and magical. We were taking in the natural beauty around us, which was hard with Rick talking to us all the time. He did a lot of that, talking at us rather than talking with us. We had our sonar equipment loaded, and we were ready to go. We had to reach the area that we were going to observe and wait for the sonar to tell us that they were there. And then we were going to lower our equipment into the thick of them. We'd record audio of the whales' sounds, video to watch them, and there was also a motion detector sensor that triggered the counting mechanism. Once we reached the area, we stopped the boat and waited patiently. We were sitting there for almost 2 hours before we got a beep from the sonar. We rushed to the screens to see it. It looked like there was a group of 5 of them together. It was perfect. We got ready to attach the equipment and lower it beneath the surface. When we were done, we all divided into our individual jobs and what each of us was responsible for. I was documenting the results of the videos that the camera had, what they looked like, size, health, numbers, pretty much anything you could see. I was typing furiously into the files, wishing I had paid more attention in typing class in high school so I could type faster. My fingers just could not keep up with my brain. We were all engrossed in our tasks when the sonar started going crazy. I looked at the video screen and saw that another group had joined the first. They were curious about the equipment and they were crowding around it. We put a speaker down there that was emitting whale songs, and apparently it was working. Even Rick was getting excited, saying he'd never seen so many in one place at one time. One of the screens started flickering, and it was affecting the speaker somehow. "No!" I said. If the whale sounds stopped, the group might disperse before we were able to record all the data we were hoping to get. Rick said that one of us would have to go underneath to fix it. So I volunteered. I put on the wetsuit, the scuba gear, and I went down. It was a magical world undersea, as always. I was really banking on the history of the sperm whales to be placid mammals that rarely attacked humans. I mean, I was right there in the center of all of them. They were definitely very interested in the sounds, the equipment, and now they were interested in me. They were ginormous. I'd never seen anything this big, this close before. They could easily have swallowed me whole. I swam down to the bottom and I started fiddling with the equipment. Luckily, I'd always been good at fixing things, and before long I'd figured out what was wrong. I swam to the surface to get the parts I needed to fix the speaker, and then I went back down. And I was almost done fixing it when something made me pause and turn around. I slowly turned just in time to see a new whale joining the group. This one was the biggest of the lot. I guess he was over 70 feet long. I was trying to record as much info about him as possible visually, and I'd just been too distracted by his sheer size to actually realize the potential danger of my situation. Like I said, sperm whales would rarely attack, but it's one thing to know that logically and quite another to feel it when you're staring down the barrel of one. He was swimming straight towards me with no sign of slowing. I just stared at him. I was mesmerized. The story of Moby Dick popped back into my mind, and I prepared myself for what was about to happen. The whale started to open his mouth, and I could see the huge cone-shaped teeth. They must have been 20 centimeters long. I fought the urge to turn and swim away as fast as I could, and I just stood my ground. I knew there was no chance of outswimming a whale. He grazed my side and swam by. But just that little graze sent me off balance, and I tried to stabilize myself. I was just turning in the direction he went when I felt a shaking feeling. I looked up to see the bottom of a huge ship above. It looked like a whale hunting boat. I'd seen a lot of them in my research and in the documentaries I'd watched on one of the dangers facing the sperm whale. I tried to turn the speaker off so that they'd disperse and leave the area with the hunters. I was able to turn it off, but just then a huge spear on a line came coursing through the water and landed square on the head of the whale that had just grazed me. It made its mark, and I could tell the whale was angry, upset. He was thrashing around, and he started to head back my way. Another spear had been launched and lodged itself in the side of this great whale. It didn't slow him down a bit, though. He was still continuing to come straight for me. Now he was threatened, injured, and I knew the chances of him attacking me, thinking I was the cause of his pain, were going exponentially higher by the second. The last thing I remember was seeing that huge mouth open right over the top of me. Luckily, I had a huge oxygen tank with me, so I was able to stay underwater for a long time because that whale swallowed me whole, just as I had predicted any one of a group could earlier. The large hunting ship had started cruising away, dragging the great sperm whale and me inside it behind it. When I awoke, I was deep in the belly of the whale. The smell was foul and it was hot, really hot. Also pitch black. I could tell we were being pulled, and I wondered how much oxygen I had left in my tank. I couldn't quite turn the way I needed to in order to read the dial on the tank on my back. The wrist dial had been cracked and it wasn't working. I prayed I had enough until this whale landed wherever it was headed.